and math behind the standards are meant to be broken. Elon Musk is a great example of this. The guy, within a couple of years, took a rocket, shot it into space, and then landed it back on Earth, where people said that was going to take another 10 years in some cases. This dude did it in like 18 months. What's up, dog?
Hello, man. How are you?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. Is it pronounced Dali?
Nah,
Dale,
Dale.
Dale, Dale.
Yeah, like old white trash.
No, love it, love it. I love short four-letter names. My name's also like four letters. It's just Andy.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a kind of like a weird but cool name to have. Yeah, like being from where I'm from, it was very unique. But I got my share of bullying back in the day for sure. But this day and age, when people hear my name, they're like, "Are you famous? Do I know you?"
Dale.
I just say yes every time. I'm just like, yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, bro, for sure. I'm excited to come on the show.
Yeah, I guess we can jump straight into it. How I came across you, Dale, was I think I was just on LinkedIn. Like I've been pretty active on LinkedIn and I see that you're pretty on top of your LinkedIn game, and that's sort of how I came across your content, came across your sales content. I guess please give me and the audience a bit of an intro about you, Dale.
Yeah, best way to understand me better is to start back in 1985 when I was born. And really, my story goes back 365 days before that. My dad was at a crossroads in his life. He worked for a major corporation. He was one of the top sales guys. He was kicking butt, taking names. And he also had this dream of fulfilling things differently than how the corporate world did it. And that was difficult for him at the time because he was a young man, entrepreneurial-esque, wanting to start a family at a crossroads, like I said, right? And he said, F it. And he cut the cord, started his own business, which led to me having toner running through my veins because my dad actually started a copier company. And what's weird about copier companies is they still exist today and it's a thriving industry. You know, most people, especially Gen Z or millennial generation, are like, who uses a copier anymore? Like a lot of people, believe it or not. But secondary to that, what I found as I got older is that a lot of, I shouldn't say the majority, but a lot of privately owned copier companies are family owned and operated. So whether it's the mother and the oldest son or one of the aunts or uncles, you know, as a CFO, like there's usually family involved inside of the organization. So ultimately, my dad made very intentional choices back in 84. And as I swept the world with, you know, graciously with, you know, my beautiful looks and, you know, my screaming howls as a newborn baby, I came in rampantly and said, like, I'm going to take this thing by storm, and nobody even knew it at that point in time. But my story expands as I turned 17 years old. I get signed to a major record label with a band. I tour all over the United States. I play metal. I skip college. I barely graduate high school, you know, like buy a hair kind of thing. And but ultimately I had great grades. I had a lot of scholarship opportunities as well too to play sports or academia. And I just felt like my calling was more of a creative space and to go into the music world. I left the music world, unfortunately, due to, you know, some pretty hardcore issues that were happening within my circle in the band. Heroin addiction was one of them. And so I left the music world and started to pursue this concept of becoming a salesperson, as I believed it was the only thing that I could do because I had no degree. So I was, you know, this guy that basically was going to be thrown away by the world. So I went and started my own business and played music that crashed and burned basically. And at this point, you know, it's like, what do I do? Well, I go into sales. And of all things, I go into copier sales, which leads back to that origin story of my dad saying, I'm going to start a copier company. So he employed me for about 4.5, almost 5 years. And in those 4.5, 5 years, I learned a buttload, became one of the top reps at the company, but then he was acquired. And that's when the real magic happened. I ran with an organization for almost 7 years, built them from 8 million to 24 million. Learned a lot about the sales world in general myself, authentic selling, being a rebel inside of the sales world. Eventually worked for a big corporation called Xerox. A lot of people know those guys. Recognized how corrupt and just totally garbage the C-suite is, and most of those big corporate organizations knew that I couldn't really fix anything from inside. and decided to start the Sales Rebellion in 2019. And now I'm sitting here on this podcast with you because of all those choices.
That is super cool, Dale. Tell me a bit more about the Sales Rebellion. Like, one, I love that title, great name.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. So I really just a reflection on my story and also what I would like other people in the sales world to identify as for themselves when they look at what's right in sales. So I feel like for the most part, when you ask somebody, hey, do you want to be in sales? They usually say no, and they associate that no with all the negativity of sales. And I believe that a rebellion is very needed and that most people can look at this concept of rebellion and find hope within it, latch to it, take action that changes the world ultimately. So, we're telling a story that's more of a movement and not just like a preference. It's something that we all know needs to happen. And that if we're going to fix it, we got to do it individually, one person at a time. We got to make those intentional choices and change the way that people perceive sales through our actions. So the concept of it was really like, how do we build a training and development firm that's not like Dale Dupree training, right? But how do we build something that's more of a movement? And that's how we came up with the name.
Very smart how you sort of didn't focus it around yourself and you sort of wanted to create a movement, and then that just makes it more evergreen and just sort of gives it more sort of longevity. That's so smart. What type of training is it? Is it like one-on-one coaching? Is it videos? Is it like a community? What do you guys usually offer?
Yeah, so we are pretty standardized from the perspective of the offering itself. So what you would typically experience inside of a training firm. One thing that we do very uniquely though is that we offer one-on-one training to individual sales reps. And it's not like getting a self-employed coach. You get an entire company at your back. So we have resources, we have tools that are used, we have curriculum, we have multiple employees inside of the organization as well too. So like you don't just have a coach, you have an assistant coach, you have a person that helps with writing copy, and really like our big niche is creativity. So the thing that we do extraordinarily well is people look at our company and they say, cool, it's sales training and development. Yes, but it's infused with this identity of being creative as a salesperson because we believe that creativity is at the core of ultimate success for salespeople, and that we've whitewashed that concept inside of the industry because it's almost too genuine and too authentic, right? So it allows us an individual seller to stand out so much that the company or the corporation that employs you will fear that because they'll think, well, now he's too popular and he's going to take all the clients with him and go do something else. So we're trying to break those stereotypes ultimately as well too, give people back their creative freedoms and help them to see that that's the way to do it. That's how people prefer it. That's what we should all be doing and should have been doing in the first place for generations now. But instead we choke out those specific things. So we're, ultimately we're also helping teams because there are plenty of leaders out there that look at what I just said and they go, yeah, that's whack. And so they say, put my 30 people through this group, virtual, on site, whatever the case is, right? Like we're doing that standard operation as far as what it is that we offer, but we don't believe that we're actually training sales people in sales, right? We believe we're changing lives. We believe we're making people better. And we're starting at the core values and principles of what most sales trainers don't do. And instead of saying, let's develop your 30-second commercial, we're saying, like, let's build a foundation around what you believe and who you are, what makes you authentic, what you love about life, the things that you suck at even and are failing at, so that we can tackle those things and that we can, instead of having to play by the rules of those things or ignore them because you're not good at them, let's incorporate them into who you are. Let's recognize them and let's overcome them together. So those are hard things ultimately. So we're putting ourselves there in a very unique way because of that. I believe that's why we've had so much success so far, though, personally.
That's so cool. How does like going through foundation, figuring out what you love, what you hate, what you're good at, what you're bad at, how does that then lead to better sales?
Great question, bro. Sales is life and life is sales. So if I understand that, for example, that I'm impatient, then I understand that for myself, one of the number one things that I have to work on is slowing down and communicating differently with people because I'm impatient. And so if I recognize that I'm driven and unfortunately motivated by something like fear, and what I'll do, let me break that down. Like I'm worried that if I don't write business, I might lose my job. Which, listen, like as a salesperson, you should be writing business anyway, but it's not something you should be in fear of, right? But ultimately, if that's something that deep inside me is instilled because of trauma or just who I am, if I can recognize that, then I can understand that I probably am a little high pressured sometimes with people, and nobody likes that in a salesperson. So by understanding who I am, my core principles and values, the things I want to accomplish, like for example, if I say I'm going to serve people instead of I'm going to sell people, right? If I believe that, if I live by that, if I recognize that and understand that, then it will absolutely change the landscape around the way that somebody views me when I interact with them.
Interesting. And that simple shift of going from selling someone to serving them, what does that result in?
For rebels, it results in fulfillment. And what I mean by that is that it's hard to be happy in life. It really is. That whether it's like we don't have enough, or we don't feel like we're getting what we deserve, or we feel like we're failing, whatever the case is, it's very hard to find happiness, relationships, our hobbies, our likes, our desires, where we live. It's hard for us to be content even in most things, especially places like where we have it made. And so really what it does for rebels is it gives them a taste of fulfillment because they build community, they build relationships. And us as humans, like, I don't care how introverted you are or how much of a lone wolf you are. It doesn't, none of that matters. Ultimately, like the human body and mind and brain and heart are created, and this is just a basic standard of humans, to have some type of companionship. Even if the companionship is ultimately driven by you, right? That you don't learn how to be a companion with yourself without having things like relationships with other people and saying how they treat themselves or how they treat other people, right? So you have to have relationships no matter what. Like companionship is very important to us as human beings. And so this idea of fulfillment, comes from this companionship that's found through sales. When somebody doesn't just say like, here's my signature, but they say, I trust you. They say, I really like how you have operated in this sales cycle. They say, I really feel that there's a difference in what you're providing me. And that causes something to switch in people's brains. It's more than just like getting a big win and a nice paycheck from a commission, right? It's like those things are just the after effect ultimately. And the thing that hits you the most is this a very intentional moment of somebody expressing to you how you've made them feel through your actions, which makes you happier at the end of the day.
Now, Dale, when you sort of go with this approach of just giving value, helping, serving, and so just try to follow up, check in, no pressure, do you have to, does the sales cycle now end up being longer? And do you now have to sort of increase like the price to like a 10 to 20K plus package? Because if you do it with like a 3K package, it's sort of, does it make sense to do 4 calls, 4 follow-up calls just to close on for like 2 grand?
So I sold copy machines, right? The most highly commoditized product in the world, in my opinion. They say it's the second worst sales job to have outside of like used cars, right? And these are all statistics, right? Ultimately, so we can only trust them so much. But listen, I dealt with people calling up and just saying, hey, can I get a quick quote on this type of machine with these type of features, because we have a lease coming up in 2 weeks and we need to decide if we're going to stay with our current company. That is self-made urgency from the prospect or buyer. That is highly commoditized because all it's really asking for is a price. So I can't sell value ultimately in this moment, right? And I was one of, well, not I'm not going to say that I was one of the best, but I was one of the highest ranked, copier salespeople in the state of Florida, and was recognized around the United States by manufacturers, right? So ultimately, if you think about what I accomplished, what actually happens is the velocity goes up, the sales cycles shorten, and ultimately you accomplish things that most people aren't able to do because you have trust and credibility at the forefront of everything that you're starting this business friendship with to begin with. So instead of going in and saying, hi, I sell this product, and when you're ready to get your 18 bids, I want to be one of them, when instead I'm giving high level and value experiences. For example, I used to do things like drop off cardboard cutouts of myself stabbing copy machines with swords in the middle of the woods, and the copier would be like gold plated. And there would be text on it that would say, like, every morning this man wakes up believing that this is his job. And I would leave that for a CEO or a CIO or some C-level executive to set that initial appointment. And so that would be something so different, unique, and creative from the perspective of what they were used to having happen, that they were open and willing to exploring the business happening in a way that it didn't typically happen in the first place, which could lead a 2-year sales cycle into a 2-month sales cycle because of it. I saw some pretty wild stuff in the process. It doesn't mean that you're still not going to have 5-year sales cycles as a copier sales rep, because that's very normal as well too. But what it does mean is ultimately you're going to find people that are willing to step outside the box with you and say, this is my copier person. He's more than just a product. He's more than the manufacturer. He's more than the company. And I'm willing to stand beside him and the things that he's offering and or proposing as the fix for the solution that I need. And so to your point, everything goes faster. And really you might like, let's just say a cold caller does 100 calls to find one lead. I would probably do about 20 to find 5 or 6. So the difference is massive. And now look, like, let's say I did 20, I found 5 or 6 deals. There's a lot of deals to start working. Let's say I did that twice. Now I have 10 to 12 deals that I'm working. A lot of the time you can get very overwhelmed with those things, especially in this type of sales, and it can stall you out without a doubt. So that's why it's very important to stay very focused without being rigid, right? So it's this fluent concept of, hey, I have a very hard work ethic. I want to help and serve people. So I need to fix their problems, get them to a place where they feel very comfortable. And I need to identify whether or not that's something that can happen with these 12 people, or if this is going to be something I'm selling for the next 3 years. And if it's 3 years for all 12 of them, I'm going to put them in a place where I'm going to stay in touch with them for the next 3 years while I go out and find 12 more deals in the meantime. So really, it's just about competency. It's about your drive. It's about your internal worth. It's about how you view yourself and you view sales and how you fit into the story that's being told of it. And if you want to rise above the mediocrity, right, there's no better way than to serve people instead of selling to people in the first place.
That's so cool. Why do you think the average person would get one sort of solid deal with 100 cold calls and you would get like 20, 30 out of 100 or 5 in 20?
So, like, law of averages is an important piece of the puzzle here, but ultimately, everything, all the standards are and math behind the standards are meant to be broken, right? So, and this is done all over the world in all kinds of different ways, right? Elon Musk is a great example of this. The guy, within a couple of years, took a rocket, shot it into space, and then landed it back on Earth, where people said that was going to take another 10 years in some cases. This dude did it in like 18 months, from developing the literal technology. So these things are meant to be broken, bro. And the average is that people make 100,000 get one. Why? Because of time. People are busy. They don't have the time for you. You're a salesperson. All you're doing is calling to set an appointment at the end of the day, right? But if you're a servant leader, if you're a rebel, your mindset is different. Your mindset is, I'm just trying to literally find a place in that open window of time during your day to be able to communicate with you. So because we think differently from that perspective, we operate differently with people. And because we operate differently with people, we give them better experiences. And ultimately in that process, you're still going to have your law of averages, right? And you're still going to have realistic expectations at the end of the day. You have to. So in your mind, you're always going to tell yourself it's going to take 100 to find one. But in the process of doing things much differently and being a legend inside of your community, you'll find 5 when you call 20.
Interesting. When you have people reach out to you, be like, hey, how do you deal with this objection? Hey, I watch your content, I found it really valuable. When you have these sort of inbound leads, do you try to sort of get them on a call straight away? Or do you sort of warm them up and then until they're ready and they're actually looking for help, looking for coaching, then you book them in a call?
There's 3 types of people that typically come into our organization. And I would challenge most people to think that it's probably the same for their organizations to an extent. There could be some caveats. One is a person that what they see, they like. They say, this is cool. So like the Sales Rebellion, that's cool. I want to be a rebel. That sounds like fun. But they're not necessarily serious about spending money to do it. They just think it's cool. And we love those people, right? We got plenty of free resources for those people. And really they are what make the movement at the end of the day. Now, and anybody out there selling a product, whatever, like if I sold copiers, it's the same thing. People would look at me. My brand was the Copier Warrior. Anybody listening, go to copierwarrior.com and still see the website I built in 2012. It's a dope website too. So enjoy thinking to yourself, wow, this dude built this in 2012. This is crazy. So, so and I've never updated it, right? Just like the code on the back end. So it's fast, right? So this website I built, I created a brand around it. Same concept. People would say, Copier Warrior? That's cool. I want to understand this better. It didn't mean they wanted to buy something. The second group of people are those that are like, I need this. I need this. I need this. And not only do I need this, like I kind of want it as well too. Like I know I can be better at sales. This guy's saying things that make a lot of sense to me. Right. Same goes for the copier salesperson, right? Same kind of concept here. But the problem is that even though they need it and they kind of want it, they're never going to pay for it. they're never going to drop $10,000+ on their development over the course of 6 to 8 months, right? It's just not going to happen. And they're going to shit their pants when they see that cost in the first place. And so being realistic about that is super important, because we're also not trying to force those people into anything. Like it's okay that you didn't realize that this wasn't $400 for a year, right? It's okay. And there's plenty of resources out there that we can turn you on to. And we have free resources as well, help you sell better just the same, right? And suck less. Then there's the third group of people. These people are ready. They come in ready, right? Now, the caveat to them is that there's typically a couple different versions of them. They come in ready, but they need to understand a little bit better, like what does their investment do for them? What kind of ROI should they expect? So there's a logical buyer, so to speak, right? That's a little bit more calculative, right? Around the numbers, around this, around that. And this goes again for every industry, right? There's a more emotional buyer that's just like, I'm ready and I don't even care what it's going to cost, and I'll just throw it on this credit card. And so that it's important to understand that these people too, that when they come in this way, that you'll know exactly their learning style and what you need to hone in on too. So the person that's like all gung ho, well, the problem is that they'll be the fastest person to fail, because they'll be the first person to basically just kind of give up on themselves. Like, yeah, it's just a moment. It was a weak moment. I really do want this. And I really want to choose legendary. I really want to be a rebel, but man, it's hard. Yeah, because sales is hard. That's why we do it. Right. So, but it takes a lot out of you when you're being a rebel, right? Because there's a lot of creativity that goes into it. We call on people's inner greatness. We're not mediocre people. We want you to sell more than everybody that's ever sold your product. So taking you to those levels is important, right? So again, there's a couple different variations, right, of ultimately of the people that buy and why they buy and how they buy. But it's our awareness that makes the most sense in it all. Because if you have a person, as an example, if you have a person that came in like under that third category and they're kind of like afraid to even interact with you, you send a link to set an appointment, they never do anything. Most sales reps would just stop. Like we'll send them emails until they block us straight up. And it's not like we send them email after email after email. Like we send them memes of Marky Mark staring off into the distance and it says awkward silence. And we send them memes of us standing in the rain, drenched, soaking wet, staring back through the computer screen at them like, where are you? We send them questions and just say, hey, I'm starting to think you might have hit that link on accident. And now I'm just filling up your inbox for no apparent reason. Should we stop or should we keep going? And until we get a response, ultimately we give people an experience and have a lot of fun with them. And hopefully at the end of the day, like most of them see it, they laugh. And even if they're worried about responding, they should know that they're loved, right? That's how we as sellers should operate. We should never make people feel like, they're hurting us or harming our business. Like people are people, man. I mean, society is cultured in a way that basically, people don't know any better. They think that we're salespeople just as much as they know that they're hated as a salesperson, right? Because of the way that the mediocrity of the sales world operates. So, there's that thing that's in the back of your head all the time, right? Ultimately. And because of that, it creates these rifts and this distance, right? But at the end of the day, I think what I love about our company and what we do is that ultimately we get a lot of people that believe in our philosophy, and you can go all over the world and talk to people that know who we are and what we stand for, and they'll tell you straight up like, oh, we do, yeah, to this company, we do things like send direct mail. We don't do it exactly like the rebellion, but we get our influence from them. You'll hear people say, yeah, when I make my cold calls, I tell people that I'm not calling about their car's extended warranty, and I'm not calling about a weird free timeshare in the middle of South Carolina. But I am calling about something else. If you want to roll the dice and find out what it is, so you'll find our influence, out there. And I think that's the thing that's most important for us, and not necessarily who buys and who doesn't.
That's amazing, Dale. With people in category 1 and 2, people who are like, that's cool, and people in 2 are like, I need this, but they're never going to drop the money, is it still worth creatively getting them on a call, knowing that you'll still close 10% of them? Or is it better to just continue just messaging them, following up, warm them up, book them in a call later down the road, and now your sort of close percentage is at like 25%? Or is it always just better to just get people on the phone as quick as possible?
We got a theory called the living pipeline, and the idea of the living pipeline is that you got to meet people where they are, and then you just have to nurture them into the next thing that makes the most sense. So for somebody that's in number 1 or number 2, if they would like to meet and close, then we'll meet with them. Right. But if they want to meet, 3, 4, 5 times, or they want to prolong the close to a certain point, it's not that we break up with them or we tell them that we're not going to chase them anymore. We just stop putting in the same type of effort, which we also teach sellers to do. And what I mean by that is we stop trying to close them. Like, they clearly don't want to close, and they're just worried about saying yes because they have some type of something that's pushing back on them, whether it's a spouse that doesn't want them to spend the money, whether it's a looming recession, whether it's they feel that their job safety isn't necessarily there anymore. And even though they got the money right now, in a couple of weeks, again, 10K plus is a lot of money for coaching. And and a lot of times people spend more than that, $40,000, $50,000, right? So that it's, again, the ROI is always there. It's really about people taking a risk. And so if I get somebody on the phone, look, I can't force somebody to do anything differently than if I'm on the phone or am I emailing them. Can I influence them differently is the question. Well, yeah, for sure. You can definitely influence people differently on the phone. And we have a whole, process that we take people through. It's very human, very authentic, and very genuine, that at the end of it, if they say no, then they say no. And to us, like, that's totally fine. It's why we take people through the system that we take them through in the first place, because we just want them to say yes or no. We don't care if they say no. It doesn't hurt our feelings. We know we're building something magnificent, and that it's going to take time, and that ultimately we're going to, get pushed back by a lot of people. But we've had year-over-year growth every year, substantial growth for the last 4 years through, literally COVID. And so for us, like, in seeing the evidence of what we're building and where we're headed, we know that we're not going to stop. I think the idea here is, like, if a seller is thinking in this respect, and let's just say that seller is a founder like myself, and somebody that is, C-suite inside of their organization at this point. You don't have to be the CEO to own your company, right? But because I'm not, I gave that seat away. I'm not a good CEO. I'm letting somebody else do it. And I should say I'm privileged to allow somebody else to do it because I suck at it. But the thought process is if it's somebody like me that's listening, what you got to be thinking about is, well, where does our innovation come in? And like, what we found is that we started offering a third product. And when we started offering a third product, our closes went up. We got more closes. If we met with somebody, as an example, that said, hey, I'm interested in this product, we had a 75+% close ratio with them, instead of more like a 30 or 40 for the individual students. So we found, and then ultimately we also found that people will gladly pay the money up front, when it's a lower cost, lower impact concept, and that all of them come out wanting more at the end of it. So it's actually a funnel for other products as well too, or it's a funnel for, like, a continued relationship with this person, to help and mentor them, like, on the sidelines, so that they do something like become a VP of sales or an owner inside of an organization or inside of something that they do for themselves, and that eventually will hire you to come and do for them, for their people, I should say, what you did for them when they were a seller.
That's amazing. Do you have a theory on trying to hold off revealing the offer until you know that person's ready to either jump on a call, or when you're talking to them, ready to commit today? Is there like a theory on how the moment you reveal your offer, resistance has gone up if they say no, and it's like very hard to get them back in? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a scarcity mindset. I think you tell people what you're selling. Stop hiding it. Stop saying, download this free thing and here's a 10% discount off of this cheap thing, and get them in some kind of weird funnel that ultimately takes them to a higher ticket item, blah, blah, blah. All that is made up garbage, in my opinion. And it's from people that haven't done high ticket sales or haven't done commodity based selling at that. It's from people that have sat around on their butt and just made up a bunch of crap about like how to sell. And they're selling to people that are like solopreneurs that don't know any better in the first place in most cases, right? That want their own single line income, whatever the case. It's a giant scam. I don't need to name any names. Anybody listening knows exactly who these people are. I've been invited to speak at their conferences. I will not show up to them. I've been invited to their circles. I'm not interested in them. And because ultimately they're ruining the sales world. All right. So you can go on our website right now and see exactly what we charge. You can see a ballpark of the lowest price to the highest price for an individual contributor. And ultimately, if you ask us something like, hey, if I have a team of 20, what's that cost me? I'm not going to, on the other side of the phone, go, I don't want to give you a price right now. What I'm going to say is it sounds like you're reluctant about spending a lot of money on your people and you're worried that I'm going to be priced out of range. That's the response. Right. If you really want to understand like where someone's coming from, be blunt, raw, and honest with them, be proactive in your selling, and don't be lazy, about how you're presenting, and don't create all this smoke and mirrors in the process. I get a little fired up on that topic, obviously, but it's because I've had to suffer from it in my own career. And I've had to suffer from it, not just like in buying something, but from people coming to buy something from me and being reluctant because they're afraid I'm going to do that kind of thing to them. And it's really frustrating because it's not how we roll.
Got it. So right now the most of the people do lead magnets, download this free ebook, free just pay shipping. So everyone's doing that thing where everything's like a funnel to an upsell. What's the better method?
Stopping that. So, I mean, like if it's a magnet to get people attracted to your organization, that's different, right? Give your thing away for free because you know that when people start doing it, that they're going to need to pay you for it eventually to get it elevated to another level or capacity. So, and then let them come to you and go, yo, I just made 10 G's off of your method. And now I'd like to make 100. And I feel like I need some coaching because of that, or whatever the case may be. And nurture those people, like help people succeed instead of just giving them something for free. Like your lead magnet, your thing should be an enabling magnet is what it should be. It should be something that's making people so wildly successful that they're like, why are they helping me become so successful? And clearly I want to be a part of their tribe. Like we used to give away something called the Crumpled Letter. We charge a lot of money for it now. Well, I think you can still get it for like $15 on our website, right? But it's not $1, right? Like, and we stopped doing that because we were watching all these people do this garbage lead magnet funnel stuff, and we're like, we're going to get lumped into these people. We don't want this. So now you got to pay $15 for a piece of paper, right? That's the thought process. Like that's a lot of money, right? A lot of people look at it and they're like, what? Why would I pay $15 for this? Well, I'll tell you why, because you're literally about to set more appointments with it than you've ever set in one sitting. And you're going to make more money off of it because of that. You're going to build better relationships with people than what people find in the dead end, right? Because there's always a dead end to something that's low cost because of the high impact, right? The thought is that when they get to their dead end, is they go, wait a second, there's a whole system to this thing that I don't understand because I'm trained in the ways of the world. I'm trained in the mediocrity of sales. And so I'm trying to do something alongside this very innovative concept that's not going to work. Because when I try to manufacture urgency or bait and switch like my boss wants me to about X, Y, and Z, I'm going to get shut down. And so I need to understand their process better. And then they do things like buy curriculum or, just join our free Slack channel, whatever the case. But again, like, is your product or service that you're selling, are you really trying to change people's outcomes? Like, or are you just trying to sell them something to make a bunch of money for yourself? And really, sure, like a lot of people could nod their head and go, yeah, I'm fixing stuff. Right. Like I'm fixing things with my product, but are you, or do you just perceive that you're fixing things? Did you create something because in your mind, you're like, oh, there's a gap here, but did you even interview anybody about that? Have you ever asked a client, 5 years after buying your thing, why they stopped using it 6 weeks in? Like, have you really done the research? Do you really understand? And I think that's the biggest gap and the biggest issue in the sales world is that We make something, we put a price tag on it, we tell people to buy it, and we don't really care if it impacts them. We need a couple 5-star reviews so that we can hit like a nice Google Analytics thumbs up, 99% rating or whatever, and then we move on to the next person. So
Talking about that, how do you go ahead and create a product that people do use in the training space? Because just like a book, if you have 100 students, like 70 people are gonna watch like one video, 40 people would probably consume an hour worth of content, 30 people might actually go ahead and utilize the coaching and the weekly calls, and like only maybe 20 would still be there after 3 or 4 months, and maybe only 10 would actually go ahead and try to make money off the skills they've learned.
here's what I would say: that two things. Number one is that like our coaching is very customized and it's built around this concept of meeting people where they are. So you come to our system, we want to know what's going on with you. And even though we take you through our system, we meet you there. So if you suck at writing emails and you're terrible at talk tracks, like we're going to help you with that right away, right up front. And if it takes the entire time that we're together, we'll help you with that. Right. So because of that, we hold people accountable to what we're telling them to do. Now, to your point, though, if like we have a few books coming out. If somebody buys, if 100 reps are given my book in a sales bullpen, and 10% of them read it, well, that's on their leader. That's because their leader's not meeting them where they are, and is not trying to really truly develop them in the first place. Like what we do in our product is to develop people. Like we want to develop people. We don't really care at the end of the day, ultimately, about your budget and what your boss wants, as far as what looks good or hits their prerogative or their narrative. Like we want what's best for the people. And because we think that way and look at it that way, when we sit with somebody and they suck, we don't go fire this person. We sit with them and we say, hey, you suck. Let's make you better. And if people are down, then game on, bro. Like listen, because I was that kid. I was the kid that was bullied because I was the biggest dude out there. I was kind of clunky. People said I'd never be good at things like sports. And then I crushed them all, right? By my own free will, ultimately, but also because a small community of people came around me and said, don't let these people lie to you. Right. And because of that, I became the guy that defended people at 15, 14. I'd be starting lineup, some dude on the bench that had to play for 18 seconds, or the coach would be fired. They put him on the floor. I'd be passing him the ball every time we got down the court, and everybody on the team being like, yeah, this Dale guy is too nice to people. Right? That's what people used to say. But look, the whole notion of nice guys finish last is garbage. I watched my dad do it his whole life. I watched the impact that he created for folks. He changed lives. He created something that literally can never be wiped from this earth because he gave a shit about people. And that whole heart component is really what this comes down to. So when I say to myself, like, a leader gives my book to 100 people and 10 people read it, well, the leader sucks. And that does suck, right? Ultimately, but the 10 people that read it, I'll change their lives through that book. My book isn't just going to be like, here's how you set more appointments. My book is going to be like, here's how you stop with the addictive personality that you have and you get off the porn and go call your wife instead. This is how I help you to become less dependent on substances like alcohol or drugs, and instead look to something more spiritually related, or something that is driving you to be a better person ultimately. Because these are the things that you need to fix to be better at sales. Because I'm somebody that struggled with depression, being bullied half my life, having an addictive personality towards substances, always angry to try and cover up my suicidal tendencies. I am someone that struggled with those things. I am the trash can of people, bro. That's what I am. That is who Dale Dupree is. And all glory to that image, bro. Because if it wasn't for the fact that I'm a broken human, I wouldn't have the success that I have today. But I owe it to a community, which is what I'm replicating with the Rebellion. I'm building my own version of it, and I'm building it bigger than just a zip code, going all the way worldwide. Excuse my French.
I think based on your sort of worldview, I think you're right. Because like I recently shifted from, like, I remember back in days I used to jump on calls with people. It would try to, do the one call close, and you don't close them. You give so much value, guide them through the process, but there's just something stopping them. They're just not ready at that moment. It's hard not to blame yourself. It's hard to not be like, man, I suck. Like I couldn't close that. Whereas like if you sort of shift it to like, hey, like I didn't close that person today, I didn't close them now, but like they're still my funnel. I'm going to keep following up with them every single month, every single year. I'm going to keep giving value. I just want to help this person. All of a sudden, that sort of pressure you put on yourself to close that person on that one call goes away, and now you're no longer beating yourself up after not closing that person.
Agreed, bro. It's a long game play. If I look at my life as something that's longer than just a week or a month or a fiscal year, if I look at my life as eternal, bro, that I'm leaving a legacy, that every moment counts, that the things that I do matter. If I think about it from that perspective, then I don't tell the little white lies. Then I let somebody not buy from me because it's better for them, which in the long run is better for me. And if I can do these things, I can put my print on the world in a different way that is unpopular, but it is literally the one thing that we all need. And it will literally light the world on fire. But again, it gets drowned out because it's not the fancy car, it's not the flashy home, it's not the big commission check. I made tons of money in sales, bro, tons so far. And as a copier sales rep, bro, I mean, sometimes I wonder why I got out of it. And then I remember, like, because I'm called to do big things. Right. And that's, it's tough, bro. It's tough to juggle, to say, cool, I can make $500,000 selling copiers and not having to have a payroll. Right. And I can just watch out for myself and do my own thing and just whatever. Right. It's like, that's an easy thing to kind of fall back on at the end of the day. But I'm also somebody that understands ultimately like what that does to us as people when we focus on something that literally is never ending. Right. Fulfillment doesn't come from money because money inflates every year and it doesn't even worth what it was, 6 months ago. So it's a constant chase. Right. But relationships, people impact the compounding effect of our fulfillment and happiness and the stamp that we'll put on the world. It's priceless, bro. And it never stops. Now, I still have people from back in the day that hit me up every once in a while. And they're like, yo, you were an inspiring person. And even though I was a terrible person back then, bro, I don't really even ultimately agree with a lot of who Dale was at those stages of my life. People saw a glimpse of what was so good because at the end of the day, the guy you see today was in there, right? The guy you see today was trying to unleash. And at some point he came out, and thank God he came out, or else I'd be dead.
That is so awesome. Talking about relationships and sort of following up and sort of seeing it as a long term, like let's say every day you're sort of following up with 20 leads, 20 people in your sort of funnel, you're sending out memes, you're giving value. What happens when you're sort of your sort of vault, your list of leads go from like 200 to 500 to 1,000 to 2,000, and if you're only doing 20 a day, does that mean you're getting less touch points in per person? Now you're going to be reaching out to that same person every 6 months rather than every 2 months just because they're further down the list? And is there ways to automate that? Is that when you sort of start handing off leads to a second sales rep? What's your advice for that?
It's all relevant, right? Like it depends on what you're selling, the cycle of your product. So really like the metric side of things in regards to how many calls, to how many conversions can happen through that effort, to the time-based sale as well, because time is the most important thing in sales. It's the currency of sales, right? It really is. Time is the currency, attention is the exchange. And if we can really understand those metrics and that data, then it's not so much about like what do we do as much as it's about being prepared for it and saying, okay, cool, well, these 20 accounts I just found, none of them are buying for 2 more years, right? So by understanding though that ultimately by literally saying once a month, let's just say that once a month you hit these 20 accounts up for the next year and a half. If once a month I did one thing, picked up my phone and called them, sent them a quick email, made a post on LinkedIn and was like, shout out to the homie, Andy, right? If like once a month for literal seconds, I put my effort into building on that relationship, right? And then a couple minutes around like continued learning of those people, right? What drives them, what motivates them, what keeps them in sync with their lives. If I can also seek to understand so that I may serve better, right? If I just have a different mindset, you were talking about in total, the practice of, let's just say it's at like 50 or 60 people, 2 days. out of a 30-day cycle. Right. And so the rest of those days are full and free for prospecting, follow-up meetings. So really, I think we put this big emphasis on time, and we're unrealistic about the emphasis, that we try to pretend as if somehow like 8 hours isn't enough in a day. And that's nuts. And there's this hustle culture that lies to us. And there are people that say things like, the 4 hour work or the 4 day work week is a myth as well too. And like, look, like I worked really hard to get where I am as well, but I also took like 3 months out of the year, making very high dollar amount. I would take 3 months out of the year and just do whatever I wanted. So people that say that those things are a myth are wrong, right? What's a myth is that you don't have to work hard to get there. It's not everything is relaxing, right? Not everything is stress free. Like, just because you took 3 months out of the year doesn't mean that you have a full meltdown of the office because you just lost $1 million sale. Like, that's still relevant to your walk. It's about the life design that you create. It's not about how anybody tells you how to do it either. Like, we influence people at the Rebellion around the concept, but we don't tell them they have to do it this way or they won't be successful. We figure out what kind of personality they are and how to help them to develop that, because then the sequencing comes into play a little bit easier and better. Because if we understand that somebody's really abstract in the way that they think and act, then we know that we've got to have something very designed for them, or else they'll lose track of those 20 accounts. And one day they'll go, oh shoot, I was supposed to hit these dudes up. And they'll go, oh well, let's do that real quick. And that person will be like, yo, sorry, I totally moved on to somebody else. So diligence is important, right? But again, it's about the effort that you want to put in at the end of the day. So sure, you can build systems and buy a bunch of tech stack, but then there's homies like Scott Leese out there that just like literally every day wakes up and does exactly what he needs to do to be successful, and he doesn't need the internet and he doesn't need technology, and he just does it. And I'm kind of built the same way. I don't want to like take his thunder, right? But like my dad was like, look, you can have a CRM, or you can just be responsible and get your stuff done, and so that's how I learned. I learned from like the bear of sales, like he was an ancient bear at that, right? I mean, this guy, he knew how to forage, he knew how to self-sustain, he knew how to serve, he knew how to like make sure the family was taken care of. I mean, he was incredible at what he did. And so I honed my own skills and said like, cool, I'm good at some of this stuff, I'll do that. And I'm not good at some of this stuff, so I won't do that. And I will do something like outsource this, or get an assistant for that, or hire another sales rep for these things, right? So again, I think it just, long answer, right? But I think it comes down to this design of what you want it to look like and what helps you to be better.
And then Dale, how do you go about sort of rating each lead and sort of knowing how long the sales cycle is and knowing who's hot and who to prioritize on, and you should be following up on that person much more because they're hotter? What's the best way to go about that?
So building curiosity in people is a powerful tool. So if I have somebody extremely curious about what we do and how we can help them, then I've overcome a lot of different issues. I don't have to create urgency because of that. And I've started something with somebody that is on their terms and not necessarily mine, even though it might have been through my actions. Right. So like, for example, I talked about crumpled up pieces of paper. We send letters that we call the crumpled letter. That is a very basic tool that we use, but it's something that's highly effective. The copy is dope. It's very, very, very high end from the perspective of how the reader processes it. It's all psychologically based. Everything is very well tuned and tailored around human behavior, around basics of communications. But this piece of paper is wadded up like trash, right? And so when you pull it out of this envelope, it's all like crinkled and it feels old. And sometimes we even give it like an old yellow look. It just depends on like how you're feeling that day, right? And what your theme is. But imagine you're a CEO and you open this thing up and it says, hey, you're probably wondering why this is crumpled up. Well, my curiosity is going crazy at this point. And if I then tell you, well, 99% of the sales and marketing you get is trash, and so I pre-crumpled this letter to make it easier for you to throw away because I value your time, you're going to be on another level emotionally. And because of that, I don't need a score anymore. Because what you're going to do is you're either going to write me or not. So then I got to either work to get your attention fully because you're a super busy person and figure out whether or not you like what's happened. And that's my effort. Or I'm going to hear from you and you're going to say something like, yo, That's pretty cool. Let's meet. And so I've only got 2 levels, hot and, warm. So, to me, it's like complicated less. That's how I see it. Like, speak to humans through raw interactions like that. You get on your first meeting, you don't do all the tricks and garbage. Like, so why are we here today? Like, you know exactly why you're here today, salesperson. Stop with that stuff. Tell the person instead, like, hey, so this is usually how this works. We do this 30-minute meeting in 15 minutes because I like to do things very efficiently. And I want to get you back to your day. At the end of it, you either think I could do business with this guy, or you think pound sand. And that's where I'd like to get with this. So if you would give me your terms and your red lines and dot your I's and cross your T's in 5 minutes or so to tell me about your needs, I'd be happy to see if we can fulfill them. And at the end of this conversation, you tell me how you really feel, man. And by your response, I will appropriately and effectively follow up with you. The problem is that we don't do things like that because we're afraid to how people will react. And if they think we're arrogant or snotty or too brash. And listen, like the way I just laid that out is absolutely over the top. But at the same time, the premise of what I just said is exactly how we deliver in our presentations to people, is that we want to be raw and gritty. We tell people things like, we don't say, hey, I don't want to waste your time. What we say is, hey, thank you for your time, because time is the most important thing that we can give to each other as humans. And so we're going to try to get you out of here a little bit early because we respect and want to honor your time. Those are the kind of words that have to stick together and be in place in order to have somebody at the end of a call when you say, well, hey, usually what happens now is we put you in a funnel and about 2 years from now, you're going to sign up. So is that, are you keen there, or are we looking at some, shorter time frame or something a little bit different? And by interrupting that typical pattern, having some fun, throwing it out there in a very raw way, you'll change the way people react to you. And in that reaction, that difference of reaction, you will change the way that people are impacted by you. And because of that impact, you will change the way that they believe that you can impact them.
That is amazing. So many golden nuggets there. So let's say they go ahead and respond and they're like, I think I want to do it in a shorter time frame. I don't want to wait 2 years and go down that funnel. Let me get back to you. Let me think about it. How do you respond to those objections? Or like what next?
I love all those objections. I usually say, cool. So my sales training book tells me that you're not going to say yes. And it also tells me I'm not allowed to get off the phone with you right now because you said maybe and didn't give me a yes or a no. So instead of going through the typical rigmarole, can we agree on a couple of things? Would that be okay for you? And thank you for the permission to do that. And these are the 2 things. Is that something you can get behind, or do you feel like I'm being a little too salesy, or what's your take? And just allowing more transparency in those moments. Right. So I respect what you're saying. I like the fact that you're telling me we're going to move forward. However, there is still a 90% chance you never get back to me again after this phone call. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, could we agree to a couple of things before we get off the dial? So again, I don't think there's anything wrong with the rule of 3 in the world of psychology and in general, in the way that the brain works, is that repeating something more than once sets it in stone better. And it allows people to get away from this lackadaisicalness or the inability to commit, because they start to feel comfortable with what's happening. It's like you take somebody to a soccer game for the first time, and God bless the person that says this, but I don't like soccer. Oh God, that hurts my heart just to say that. But they say I don't like soccer, and you're like, well, just come to a soccer game. Well, like forcing somebody to go to a soccer game isn't going to make them like soccer. Right. But if you were to say like, well, why don't you like soccer? And they were to explain to you what's wrong with soccer, and you were to say, cool, so sounds like you would prefer this to happen at a soccer game. Well, yeah, I would actually prefer that to happen at soccer. And suddenly, like, you're talking about soccer in a positive way, even though they're not telling you that they actually are going to like soccer, but to the point where you can say, well, I got tickets. Do you want to just go to one? It's not a bad idea. Like, again, it's about influence and it's about expression and getting people to work out their own inability or their own indecisiveness around what it is they do or they don't like, they do or they don't want. So again, the more that I can just have somebody talk through it And the more that I can meet somebody where they are in that moment, instead of trying to like handle the objective or the objection, or throw some stupid line out there that one of these, 8-figure gurus told us to do. Like, look, those 8-figure gurus are silver spoon fed, and most of them, like what they've written and their ideas are rehashed from the old, and they're tricking all of us. And we're all being conned by these people at the end of the day, right? Humans are not as intricate and wild and crazy as we make them. We are basic. We want to feel good. We want to feel love. And because the world sucks so much, it's hard. And because I have an agenda as a salesperson, but this person doesn't share that same agenda, it makes it more difficult for us to meet here. Right. So if I can just really think basically about a lot of these things, it will elevate and change the way my sales career plays out.
Interesting. And then how do you go ahead and push through all the smoke screens? Like when they say, I think, oh, I want to think about it, like how do you actually dig through and figure out, okay, it's actually a money issue. Oh, it's actually a time issue. Like how do you dig through the smoke screen? And do you also aim to like get a second call booked in at the end of those 15-minute chats?
So that would be way too reactive. I don't believe in reactionary sales or reactive sales. I believe in proactive sales. So if I don't want somebody to give me a bunch of smoke screens at the end of a conversation, then at the very forefront, before they ever come into my system, they need to know that that's not acceptable. And I need to call those things out at the very front end of what we're doing. So if I'm waiting to the end to just cross my fingers and hope this person doesn't object on price, then I'm not doing it right. But if at the very forefront, if I say, hey, before we even do the presentation, if I told you that the program is going to be $25,000 to put all your reps through it, are you going to tell me no at the end of this? And what's interesting is you put the ball in the court of the person where like you're asking this question, right? About how do we handle it, but what about them? Like, how would they handle it if we do it to them, right? Is the thought process. So, but again, what you'll also find is that people love the sincerity, and they'll go, I like that. They'll go, I like that. That's a lot of money. So I'm going to need you to justify that over the course of this conversation. And I'm going to say, justify that. And I'm going to meet them where they are. And I'm going to say, but I need you to explain that. I mean, what does that mean? So you're saying there's a chance, right? Dumb and Dumber, right? So the big picture perspective here, I think, is that sellers need to be more proactive. If they're less reactive, then they'll sell more.
That is amazing. I have a ton of other questions, but I want to be respectful of your time, Dale. You've dropped so many golden nuggets, and like the audience that's watching this, like they're going to be learning so much. So thank you for your time today.
I appreciate that, bro, very much. Thanks for letting me come on and hang out with you.
Dale, where can people find more about you? How can they absorb more of what you've shared today?
The best way to go and find the Rebellion is literally thesalesrebellion.com. Lots of resources on there, free Slack channel. It's a great place. Content wise, we are developing out the company pages, but if you go and start following at Sales Rebellion, we're on every platform. If you want to find me and my thought leadership, Dale Rebel Leader, at Dale Rebel Leader, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you can find me. And then LinkedIn is where I post daily, which is linkedin.com/in/Copier Warrior.
That's beautiful. Tell me a bit about the Slack channel. That's something I've been hearing people talk about. I know everyone talks about Discord, Telegram, Facebook groups, but I use Slack for my company, but I've never considered opening it up for my audience. What's your advice on that?
Yeah, we find it to be a very cool place for people to just come hang out, swap ideas, meet other rebels. We put our students in there, have private channels for the students, but then give them public access to everybody and anybody. And because of that, it allows the private students to also meet each other in the public channels as well too. We celebrate wins. We talk about big achievements for the reps. We also give free tips. Obviously we want people to be getting their own success, throughout the relationship that they have with us, whether it's paid or not. And so we just treat it like a big family. And the idea is that, we're building a movement. Like, people believe in the Rebellion because we put others first, right? We think of people over product. We think of community over commission checks. We think of giving an experience over performing a pitch. We think of fellowship instead of negotiating. And because we think so differently, and we're doing a good job at driving that home, ultimately the people that it already resonates with, that already exist out there. So for anybody that has a good idea, remember that there's somebody else out there that will like it. And there's a lot of people just like that, that'll go, I've always thought like this. I'm going to follow this. right? Put your idea out there. People will come if you build it.
Dale, thank you so much for your time. I love how you're so open, you love sharing, you have such an abundance mindset, you're so humble, you've been able to, you're so confident in all your flaws in your journey, you're so relatable, and I could definitely feel that sales is something you're definitely passionate about. You have this really, you have this authenticity, and you really do want to help and make an impact, and I could feel that through the screen.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate the kind words. It's an honor.
Thank you so much, guys. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Please let me know. I'd love to get some feedback on the episode. Please drop me a review on Apple or Spotify, or even just message me on Instagram. I'd love to get your thoughts on the episode, on things I can improve on. But I really appreciate your time if you made it this far, and hopefully I made it worth your time. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week with another episode. Peace.